Welcome to the show. At the end of the last episode, we said the next film we were going to cover was Apocalypse Now. But that's incorrect. The 1977 Henry Winkler Sally Field drama Heroes is next. Seems we overlooked Heroes. Well, everyone did. It's the Ford Fiesta! I'm Kingdom of the Crystal Paul Preston.
And I'm Radam Hartswit. And Paul's right. This week we're talking about Heroes. No, not that Heroes.
It's the heroes we're talking about you haven't heard of. So we'll do you the favor of recapping what it's all about in just a minute. But first, some housekeeping, as ever. We're determined to watch all the movies Harrison Ford ever appeared in, so please support our nonsense by liking and sharing posts, subscribing where possible, and of course following us on social media at The Movie Guys pretty much everywhere, and at themovieguys.net. Now, before we talk about Heroes, no, not that Heroes.
No.
As ever, we bring you... What's new in the world of Harrison Ford? Let's talk about this, Adam, because there's a lot going on. It's been a while since we did Star Wars. And, of course, the big news, it's been news for a bit, but Harrison Ford injured his shoulder on the set of Indiana Jones 5. Guess he was rehearsing a fight scene. And shooting will continue best it can while he's hurt, but it could be 4 to 5 weeks while he's out.
I mean, more CGI, I guess, right? You know, come on. We just need more CGI to quit injuring this old... man, he's almost he's a 70-something-year-old man.
So he should fight a CGI villain. That's like at this point. Have the stunt man he's fighting just be CGI, then he can't possibly connect or pull something, whatever he did.
Yeah, you put him in a green screen stage with a bunch of padding and stuff, and you let that guy fall on some soft surfaces, okay?
And everybody jumped on this online. In fact, there was one website, I should have written down who it was, but they're like, he's out! They're going to replace him with a double for the entire movie and just do face reconstruction with you want your CGI? There it is. They're going to Christopher Lee him and put his face on this double, according to this one and only website reporting that news.
No, there's no replacing Harrison Ford. We know that. We tried. You can't just... put a computer guy in there or a Shia LaBeouf, people won't accept it. No.
They're counting on people accepting Antonio Banderas, who has now joined the cast of Indiana Jones 5.
Nice.
I mean, I appreciate what you told me before, that you think the best cast of all of these is Crystal Skull, which I think, of course, is the worst movie, but we'll happily watch it again when the time comes. But that, I mean, on paper, that's a great cast. On paper, this one's pretty good, too. I mean, you got Mads Mikkelsen and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, whose first photos of her on set have been out there now in a 60s outfit.
Really?
And, and now throw in Antonio Banderas. I mean, it's looking pretty good, too.
Yeah, I bet Antonio Banderas, my guess is going to be a Sala kind of role, a guide or somebody that's... maybe he travels to, this could be his Sala. I mean, Antonio Banderas is a pretty funny Sala type, too. He plays a lot of funny characters like that.
Yeah, I could see him getting upset and, because his, super intense face either works in the drama or it's funny to watch him get so upset.
I watched Machete Kills, and he's a funny random character in that. But I see him pop up like that sometimes, just random... funny little characters. So
when he spoofed his own gravitas best was Puss in Boots, which you should see if you haven't.
Oh my God.
It's so funny.
That's so perfect.
Other news, a Marvel Star Wars #1 comic signed by Ford just sold in an online auction for $40,500. There were 68 bids on it. Original price, 35 cents.
Wow. How do you get Harrison Ford to sign a Star Wars #1 comic book?
Oh, it's probably the 1970s.
Right.
That's how.
Hey, you won't be famous much longer, Harrison Ford. Would you sign this comic book? Wow, nobody's ever asked me to sign anything.
Yeah, exactly. So check your stashes, kids. We're all adults at this point. If you got any old stuff, check your stashes.
I know I have a decent collection of Star Wars. I'm surprised I don't have all of them for how much I liked Star Wars, but the comic books were never quite there. There was a green rabbit. There was
Jax is his name or something like that?
Yeah. Or Jax or Jackson.
That is correct.
And he'll show up again in one of these animated shows. Like, that's such a beloved pop culture now oddball Star Wars character that's never made it out of that.
The Harvey sidekick of Han Solo's.
Yeah.
But we were just talking about off the air the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood audiobook, and we talked about how novelizations are the only way you got to enjoy the movie back in the day at home because it wasn't coming back on VHS. So for me, it was the oversized Star Wars comic books. Remember those? They're about the size of a placemat or even bigger.
Yes, totally.
Those are worth nothing. I read those and reread those and like put paper over them and tried to trace the drawings. You know, they're just worth nothing, but I still have them, and they're huge. And
I love those. They were gigantic. And my favorite was and then Muhammad Ali versus Superman. I had that one too as a giant comic book. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
Yeah, that was a thing.
Who won? The champ, right? Had to win. You can't beat Muhammad Ali.
I feel like there was something happened that the kryptonite gloves or something. I don't know. I feel like there's something odd happened there. I'm not sure. Because I do remember Superman being super beat up in one frame. So maybe the champ won. Come on.
And while Ford was injured, he and Tom Cruise were both spotted at the British Grand Prix. So that's, I guess he's injured. He can't do anything. He went out to watch racing.
But that can't be your car. It must be your mama's car.
Apparently they're shooting in like Glasgow and North Yorkshire in the UK and Scotland. So, and I guess they arrived at separate times. So that would just be too much awesome star power. And like if Ford and Cruise showed up on your event, whatever it is.
Oh my God. You're like, here pulls up a car and you're like, oh my God, Harrison Ford. Oh my God, Tom Cruise. Okay. What a hang. What do you think it's like, those two hanging out?
Do you think Scientology allows Tom Cruise to smoke pot? Because that would have to
happen. Sorry, I can't. Sorry, I can't, Harrison Ford.
I understand its power now.
And I had my own sort of run-in with the Ford lineage. It took my first flight in a year and a half. And, you know, I always wanted to go to Ford's Filling Station, which is the restaurant Harrison Ford's son, Ben, ran here in L.A. for many years. And I never made it.
Yeah.
And it closed. So I thought my shot was done. However, Ford's filling station lives on at LAX Terminal 5, so I was flying out of there, and lo and behold, I went in and had a breakfast burrito that was awesome. And, it's just super classy. It's a picture of Ben Ford holding a big fish, talking about he's into, like, extreme cooking, like big exotic meals and things. Then again, he has a book, I believe, that's out about just all the stuff you can do with chicken. And there's one shot in there of he and his dad grilling together, so... It's a cool place.
This was a very funny series of texts because you sent me You sent me 4 texts. In the order it was filling station, and then a giant photo of Ben Ford, and then Ben and Harrison Ford cooking together, and then just a burrito. And it was like this. The ending of it was just, and it does come down to a burrito. But I'm glad you liked it. But it was pretty unmonumental after the first 3.
Yeah. 3 of the things represented in those photos are still there.
That's awesome that you went to you had a Harrison Ford run-in in life in a weird way. You didn't get to see him on a bike around LA, but you know.
And fulfilled a little wish I wanted for years that I just never made it to Ben's actual restaurant. But if you want to know what's going on with the Ford Fiesta and you're new to this podcast, check out The Outlaw Nation.
Oh yeah.
That is a podcast run by our friend John Roca. And Adam and I appeared on there recently, and we talked all about the Ford Fiesta, talked about our favorite Ford movies outside of the Star Wars and Indiana Jones trilogies, and talked about how far back our love with him goes. So it was a good promo piece for this show. Such
a love fest on Harrison Ford, because Roca obviously feels the same way we do, and we're going to get him on here, which would be lots of fun. But man, yeah, that was a really good, that was just solid. We had prepared sketches to take on that show. Like we have a whole...
As we do. Over-prepared as always.
The number of sketches we have prepared that we don't get to when we're on a Bobby Gucci show or whatever. But that was cool. I was like, I wasn't prepared. I was like, oh yeah, we're going to talk Harrison Ford the whole time. It was his birthday. We were on there for his birthday.
And as ever, I Google Harrison Ford news just to see what Google brings me in the world.
I love it.
It's always something wacky. And sure enough, there's an article, Callista Flockhart leaving Harrison Ford because he won't quit flying. And you know what's hilarious? I saw that a while ago, and I just saw another one. Harrison Ford, or Callista Flockhart leaving Harrison Ford because he keeps getting injured on set. So whatever it is, there are dummies there to jump on it and make a story out of it.
Every person that's married has got to be left by their wife for something. It's the old Inquirer.
Yeah, these two now have been together forever, it seems like.
Yeah, and the guy's crashed 3 airplanes since he's been married. What are you talking about? She's not going to...
Happens to me all the time.
Maybe after he crashed a classic World War II airplane into a hole of a golf course and walked away. That might have been the time where she would have left him, but...
I think that's how he showed up to their wedding. In other news, Michael Waldron, the screenwriter of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, the new Sam Raimi Marvel movie, says he drew on Indiana Jones when writing for Doctor Strange in this film. So I'm curious if we're going to see a more adventurous Doctor Strange than we did previously if you're drawing on Indy.
Doctor Strange, you have tons of amulets and things created by ancient civilizations. And, I could totally see an Indiana Jones vibe. I mean, he's kind of an adventurer of the occult, but like old stuff,
Yeah, but he always seemed kind of like high end in your class of, he was a doctor, and then he deals with this heavy spirituality and multi-dimensions. You never see him down in the rough. So maybe we'll get a little down in the rough, mixing it up.
Yeah.
Maybe the hands have healed up and he can punch people successfully.
Well, but to get his training to begin with, he had to travel to the middle of nowhere, up some mountains, and to an ancient society. I mean, it's almost like, it's like going to find Molaram or something, except he ends up getting magical powers out of the deal. But I could totally, that's an interesting influence, though. I think he would go more, something else much more fantastical. But then you think about the end of every Indiana Jones film, it's all very fantastical. There's always spirits and magic and all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty cool. One more quick recurring show segment before we get to the show proper, and that is... This date in Ford history. History. July 13th, 2021. Harrison Ford turns 79.
Why, that was last week. That, as we mentioned, is the day we got on that show and celebrated.
Yeah. 79 years old, still doing it. Remember when he was old the first time and second time?
It's not the years. It's the mileage.
I always go to him and Eastwood and other people like that when it's like, or even Tom Cruise, it's like 59.
Yeah.
It's like 59 in other parts of the world is a different 59.
I was just listening to a podcast about Jaws and the fact that we are Quint's age, we are Robert Shaw's age.
They always show that meme with Cruise and Wilford Brimley that they were the same age, as he's the same age as Brimley was in Cocoon. This was a few years ago, too. Yeah. He's just shot in a Mission Impossible movie, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk about that on the Cruise Craptacular or whatever we got coming around the corner.
People made fun of it. How long ago did Crystal Skull come out? That's like now.
Yeah, 13 years ago.
Is that long?
Yeah, 08.
God. And they were like, he's too old to play Indiana Jones. And now nobody says it.
Yeah, and the Stones will tour again, and everybody just shut up.
Yeah, just shut up. July 18th, 2000, What Lies Beneath released.
Crazy year. Robert Zemeckis puts out this and Castaway in the same year. I mean, both ambitious films.
Do you know the story behind why these came out in the same year?
I do not.
This is an amazing thing that Zemeckis
and Adam,
did.
I bet our viewers don't either. Or by viewers, of course, I mean listeners. Please, regale us.
I will regale. Listen, you're about to get a bold regaling right here. He shot the beginning of Castaway.
Yes.
And then to keep the crew together, while Tom Hanks could lose weight and grow a beard, he shot an entire other movie, edited it, and released it, and then resumed shooting Castaway.
That's right, I did hear that. Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, how cool is that? Just kept the whole crew together. And the other thing about What Lies Beneath, and this is kind of exciting, okay, this is a 21-year-old movie now, and there is apparently a twist in it that I always heard there was a twist in it, and somehow I've never found out the twist.
You've not seen What Lies Beneath?
I've not seen What Lies Beneath, and
okay.
We're
learning.
And can I hold out another 6 months or whatever till we get to it to find out what the twist is? So I'm very excited. Yeah.
You came this far.
July 19th, 2002. Harrison Ford stars in K-19 The Widowmaker, which is released on July 19th, 2002. A movie I never heard of for years.
Oh, really?
I
remember when it came out. I saw it in the theater, but...
Without me, you're nothing.
I mean, this is the time where I'm stopping seeing Harrison Ford movies automatically. I don't know what year. I think the one that I really kind of stopped on a dime was 6 Days, 7 Nights. But it was like years ago that I heard of K-19, The Widowmaker, and I was like, Harrison Ford was in a submarine movie directed by Catherine Bigelow, and I literally never heard of it?
With Liam Neeson.
With Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Well, clearly, you missed What Lies Beneath, so you got a gap there that we're going to come across, and you're going to really enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Because they're new Harrison Ford movies. Quality be damned, you're watching new Harrison Ford movies.
Now, why is there a movie called K9 the Widowmaker and K19 the Widowmaker, and neither of them are related to each other in any way?
K9 is not called the Widowmaker.
No? The mountain climbing
K9
one?
with Jim Belushi is not called the Widowmaker.
No, the mountain climbing one with Michael Biehn.
Oh, K2?
Oh, K2. Never mind.
K2.
Never mind.
Right, K9's Jim Belushi.
Oh, right. That I've seen. Of course I've seen that.
That you've seen.
That I've seen.
That is correct.
Now, K18, The Freshmaker. Is that a direct sequel to
No,
this?
but it is our cue to get on to the recap.
Yes.
Adam, let's do it.
Fresh off hit star-making turn as Arthur Fonzarelli on TV's Happy Days, Henry Winkler cashes his first fame check by turning down Battle of the Network stars to instead play one of cinema's first representations of a Vietnam veteran suffering from war trauma in Heroes.
Don't look for it. It's not there anymore.
Heroes tells the story of Jack Dunn, a man that seems raptured to fly in the face of convention and embrace the moment by acting on every whim. In the opening scene, his impulsiveness leads him to charge into a New York City military recruiting office and discourage the recruits from enlisting by making a scene that leads to his arrest.
But before he can shout, "If it feels good, do it!" turns out he's not just some activist hippie all hopped up on peace. He's actually an escapee of a Veterans Administration mental hospital, as we suddenly realize Jack is acting out, not because he's seized by the present moment, but because of the trauma in his past.
Full disclosure, we added the word suddenly. This movie doesn't treat any revelation as a... But instead, everything is more of a...
And then?
Not wanting to miss out on any recent trend, Heroes stops down to give us a little one jumped over the shark's nest with Jack and his colorful friends in the VA. But don't get too used to them, or any setting in Heroes for that matter, as Jack immediately escapes for reason.
And then he boards a bus headed to Place for purpose. But this journey isn't about the destination, it's about the Sally Fields we meet along the way. Carol, played by Sally Field, is taking a bus to Place because she's due to get married in 2 days but is having second thoughts. Now, some movies would let you know this by naming the movie Runaway Bride. But Heroes mumbles this information in between Jack's charmless and exasperating antics. And then
Jack meets a ventriloquist on the bus and steals his dummy to put on a show for Carol and the bus. It's annoying, random, and weird, and therefore one of the most accurate presentations of taking a Greyhound I've ever seen in a movie.
I think somewhere in here it's revealed that Jack is going to visit various soldiers from his unit in Vietnam. But again, like all revelations in Heroes, this information is conveyed with all the gravitas of a donut choice at Winchell's. Oh, and Jack's goal is to start a worm farm in Eureka, California, with his shoebox full of worms. Oh, and he's also carrying a shoebox full of worms the whole time. And the way I just delivered that information is exactly how this movie did the same. And then
Jack and Carol get kicked off the bus far later than expected and extend their meat commute with another impenetrable conversation at a diner. It's there that manic pixie Dream Fonz shuns society's rules against throwing worms in people's food and does exactly that before climbing on the diner's counter and kicking people's food all over, instantly knocking the diner's health department rating from a B to a C.
in what I think is supposed to feel like exuberant spontaneity, Jack does $300 worth of damage to the diner, $1,300 adjusted for inflation, which Carol pays for from her marriage escape fund. But hold on there, audience. Before you fall in love with this catch, you're going to have to stand in line behind Sally Field, who may have met the next man that she's not going to marry.
But that's not really what this movie is about. Harrison Ford makes an entrance that, and I'm calling it right here, he will never top. Squealing his tires, racing into the movie, kicking up dust, and doing a donut in the orange 1970 Camaro with an Ace of Diamonds card logo painted on the door. Out of which exits Harrison Ford. Right about now, Han Solo's in a heap of trouble.
Ford plays Ken Boyd in a performance best described by LA Times movie critic Charles Champlin as a sleepwalking sweetness or a paralyzed innocence. But for those who speak Ford Fiesta, I'd call it a bit of a Willie Bill meets Bob Falfa.
455 cubes. Woo! Jimmy Blower gets up about 600 horses. Yeah. Holly dual inlet double pumpers.
Ken served in Jack's unit in Vietnam with the other soldiers Jack is endeavoring to reconnect with. Like Jack, Ken is suffering from trauma that he exhibits by taking a military rifle he smuggled back and firing it at the stars. And then
Jack enters a race in Ken's Ace of Diamonds Camaro to win the $300 he owes Carol. Why? How? What? Welcome to Heroes. The real sin here is that Harrison Ford doesn't drive the car. Instead, Jack does and loses. Maybe the Fonz should have raced.
Ain't nothing to it. All you gotta do is go round and round in a circle. I can do that real good.
And then they build rabbit houses.
You want rabbits? Yeah. We got rabbits.
Sure. Ken's lost and listless life since he returned from Vietnam is symbolized by a bunch of unbuilt rabbit houses. I don't know either, but this is where Jack's let's put a show on in this barn attitude towards life works out. Jack gets Ken out of his rut by helping him accomplish something meaningful, getting the famous carpenter Harrison Ford to do carpentry in a movie. And in the process, giving the world one of Harrison Ford's most famous photos. Ford, bare-chested, holding a hammer, and a Napa hat with a mouthful of nails. If you look up Ford Carpenter, you're seeing a still from this movie. And then
Jack and Carol share a kiss in the motel, but uncomfortable with the plotline taking a straight trajectory, he leaves to get hassled by locals who don't get his worm farm idea either. Jack sheds his silly demeanor to coldly describe to the toughs how he will kill them. They realize they don't know who they're messing with, and mess with him. Then Sally Field proves she's learned a few moves from Burt Reynolds by driving the Ace of Diamonds straight through the front of the bar, doing a lot more than $300 worth of damage. Giving Heroes trailer a moment sure to bring soon-to-be-disappointed Smokey and the Bandit fans out to the theater.
And then Sally Field leaves her husband over the phone in a single unbroken take in a performance the critics called "Too late in this movie for me to care." And then
the police impound the car and they make it the rest of the way to Eureka, California, as the audience makes it to the realization that the previous hour and a half of the movie was just a series of distractions.
And then Jack locates Jane Adcock's forgotten wife of one of his military friends. Olivia Cole plays Jane in a performance that's subtle, endearing, somewhat sad, and, because it's in Heroes, brief. The best thing about being upset that there will be no more Olivia Cole in this film at this point is that it stopped me from being angry that there was no more Harrison Ford in the film at this point.
When Jack comes across his final buddy's home to pitch him the worm farm, he is greeted with bad news that pushes the film's budget to the forefront. Jack races through the streets of Eureka while experiencing the horrors of war right there in the streets of a small town. This scene was shot in Petaluma, California, so it has echoes of American Graffiti if it were directed by John Milius.
Eventually, Jack ends up in the arms of Sally Field, who is downed a couple of protein shakes to handle all the heavy lifting of the final scene's repetitive, dramatic one-liners.
And just when you thought this movie had finally broken out of being completely random with a targeted message, the only song in the entire movie plays us out in the credits.
Carry on my wayward son.
And that's Heroes. In case you didn't know, and most people don't, I asked, where you are in the Ford Fiesta, we're on Heroes. And, no one's heard of this movie. And yet, in 1977, it comes out 6 months after Star Wars and Smokey and the Bandit, two huge moments in Harrison Ford and Sally Field's careers. And it opened number one. Yet nobody knows this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It ended up grossing $33.5 million on a $3 million budget.
Whoa.
So it's like a hit. And them's 1977 numbers.
Wow, I mean, this is definitely the effect of the Smokey and the Bandit and Star Wars. They come out in the same week or roughly the same time period.
Certainly the same summer. I can't remember. We looked at that once to find out which came out when, but, Star Wars numbers are just unattainable by any other movie at that time. So I guess $30 million was a big deal. And on a $3 million budget, this is a hit, and maybe it was because of them. And the Fonz, all being at the top of their popularity.
And the Fonz, based on a George Lucas and Harrison Ford movie from a couple years previous, too. What a time.
It's a web. It all comes together in a huge web. And it's released with the tagline, "Finding the one you love is finding yourself."
Oh. I didn't see much of that in this movie at all, but that's a lovely sentiment.
I think she says it at one point, because, Henry Winkler's all down with the PTSD and everything until he discovers things about himself as he travels on this road. What's essentially a road trip movie.
Well, we kept comparing it to Scarecrow while watching it, which is a movie that people also don't know, but it's Al Pacino and Gene Hackman going on a road trip across country.
Check themovieguys.net. We just reviewed that movie because it had a new, I believe some kind of new DVD or Blu-ray release, so people can find it again. They won't, but it is out there, and it is two legendary actors at the top of their game as well.
It's shocking that movie exists. You're like, and most people have never heard of it. I mean, that is a movie that you absolutely would have heard of, you'd think.
Well, in Heroes, I mean, I tried to rent it, and Amazon did everything it could to tell me that's not the movie I was searching for. We may have had this before with one of the other films I was looking up. They thought for sure I was there for the NBC superhero TV series, Heroes, right? Or you want that Sam Elliott movie, Hero. It's like, dude, is that a big movie? I don't know that to be some huge film, but maybe that. Or Hero with Dustin Hoffman, they brought up as well.
Right.
Big Hero 6. You mean Big Hero 6, Big Disney. Clearly you want Last Action Hero. It's like, nobody's ever wanted Last Action Hero. And now you think I want that instead of 1977's Heroes with Harrison Ford. But, eventually scroll down. You'll find this movie. And you can watch it. But should you, Adam? Should you watch Heroes?
What year is this, 77?
77. Yeah, literally same year as Star Wars. Everyone was like waiting for what these two would do next, and it was this.
And it's so awkward. He starts the thing at a recruiting office, and he's playing a crazy guy.
This is Henry Winkler, by the way. Yeah, not
this
Harrison
is Henry
Ford,
Winkler.
Just so you know, Henry Winkler.
TV's The Fonz playing against type. Now, once again, this is a movie that, oh my God, if Harrison Ford had been the lead, he could have brought so much to this, because we're supposed to enjoy Winkler's craziness, like that he's way off. He's carrying around a box of worms because he's going to start a worm farm.
Being a little R.P. McMurphy about everything, right? From Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah. In the wake of that film.
So that's like you're set up to get that type of a feel, but it never fully comes off. It just comes off. I mean, he really feels like he's harassing everybody. He's just being a constant nuisance. You can't get on his side. He's disrupting this. He's disrupting that. He's really messing with Sally Field like a lot. He's a real pain in her ass.
Halfway through this movie, or even earlier, I'm like, why would Sally Field's character go along with any of this nonsense?
Only because the script says so.
Exactly. It's because it's on the next page that they're still together doing stuff. But yeah, in reality, if this were a movie that was more aware of its storytelling, it would have had something else happen to keep them together that was beyond just cause.
Yeah, because it's planes, trains, and automobiles. Like he gets on the bus, but then gets tossed off the bus, and then he gets her tossed off the bus. It's like he's just constantly ruining her day. Yeah. And it's like, and so many things are just dropped. They have to remind you, by the way, that he's headed to California to start a worm farm because he has a box that says Eureka on it. I think he's going to Eureka, California, they have to remind you because it's so aimless, this movie, that, oh, by the way, he's going to start a worm farm. That's his goal in life, which is a weird goal. I mean, again, he's a weirdo in this movie. He does weird stuff and talks to himself and jumps. I mean, it's almost like, again, like Getting Straight, like, when he jumps on the table in that movie, you're like, oh, it's this great strike against the system. And it's like he just trashes a diner and you're like, I don't know if I really buy that he should have trashed that diner and thrown worms at everybody's food. Was that a good call?
It's interesting because they're kind of almost saying, look, the war has messed this guy up. He acts erratically, yes. And he has, it goes from 0 to 60 in 0.01 seconds. And the movie does as well, but it kind of does a disservice to the character when that makes him so insane and so unlikable. It's almost like, I don't know if this behavior would be the result of what he went through. It's like, I get that he's displaced and trying to figure out what his life is, but it's I don't know, it felt a little even more erratic than I would imagine.
We're in cinema's reckoning of the Vietnam War, and it's a great point to bring up, but I just don't. Instead, they go for antics. I feel like that he just does weird things. And there were times in this movie where I was like, we could really actually use a flashback to contextualize what he had gone through and why in this moment. Certainly there's a big bar fight at one point. I mean, it might be it might be Henry Winkler's
His curse.
I know. Well, hey, especially you're watching this in '77. You're like, that's a pretty good Fonzie movie. Was Fonzie good in that movie? Yeah, I like Fonzie in that movie. Yeah, his curse. But where some people grab him and threaten him, and I'm like, oh, and even without this movie doing a lot of good homework to make me empathize with him or feel that some of these antics are based on what he went through in the war. That was a moment where I was like, oh, well, one thing you really, if you got a guy with PTSD, one thing you really don't do is grab him by the collar and threaten him. And, I'm like, ooh, that's going to, but I also really wanted at that moment, I was like, oh man, this really would be a good time. Much like First Blood, right? When everything they're doing to John Rambo at the beginning of that, the shower and all this stuff and throwing him into the prison, everything. He has constant flashbacks to those exact things being done to him in Vietnam. And this was a moment where I was like, oh, it's just not in the style of this movie. Meanwhile, it ends with a 10-minute sequence that is 100% that style. So it's kind of shocking that style didn't play out throughout the entire movie, because I think that really would have grounded Henry Winkler. I mean, all you need is a shot of him in Vietnam, say dug in, in an encampment or something like that, and studying the worms or something. Like the worms could come from. Instead, it just, again, I think the first part of this was kind of written as like 60s antics, much like Getting Straight, of like, you should have the freedom to be eccentric and you just don't understand this guy. That sort of like hippie feeling that never quite reconciled with the PTSD, because it had it both ways by the end. I was like, oh, they're going to do flashbacks? Well, shit, we went through that whole bar thing and he never did one flashback? Again, this is me in a post-First Blood world talking about that stylistic choice.
That is a great call, though. I mean, good Lord, that's perfect. That is a great call on this movie, because there is still no plot 20 minutes in.
No.
We don't know. They're just kind of making stuff up to happen for the movie, and you have one nutty situation from the next as he finagles his way out of a situation. But if they contextualized it in the way that you're speaking, we're on board with this character right away. Instead, we're just like, this guy is, to use a great word you just said, a nuisance.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite getting why we care. Man, that would have been, that is a perfect call on this movie. The contextualization of the horror he went through in the war earlier in the film would just give bigger meaning to everything.
And the movie was not above it. It showed, actual.
It can do it. It just didn't. And I'm like, oh, that's what was missing.
I mean, even think about the opening thing. So at the beginning of the movie, you don't even know he's a veteran, I believe, when he trashes the recruiting office. He goes in and again, in a very eccentric way, goes in and does a sort of protest thing to each of the soldiers. And I think he's like, he's acting like a recruiter, but he's being very much a parody of a recruiter, and gets himself thrown out of the recruiting office, yelling and screaming and everything like that. That could be just straight up hippie type of anti-war stuff. We don't realize, I don't think at that point, that he's a veteran.
No, they take him from there. They take him from there to the hospital, but it's a veterans hospital.
And that's when you realize, he is a veteran. Yeah. But think about if you start in Vietnam with Henry Winkler and Harrison Ford and maybe the guy that he's ultimately looking for. This whole thing is a journey that he says he's going to start a worm farm, but he's actually looking to reconnect with a person from his battalion from Vietnam, who, as it turns out, is gone. And the PTSD is that guy died saving Henry Winkler's life, right? And then how it was? Yeah. And then I guess the ultimately this thing builds to the fact that the guilt over that this guy lost his life for him, makes him mentally crack and feel that guy is still alive and he has to go visit him. I think, am I summarizing that correctly?
I believe so. It's an autobiographical tale from James Karabatsos, who also wrote Hamburger Hill and Heartbreak Ridge. So he's got a thing, I guess he took his experience in war and spilled it out in a bunch of different screenplays. James
Karabatsos. The last name of Donnie from The Big Lebowski, Theodore Karabatsos.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, what also this movie desperately needed earlier than it came was Harrison
Right,
Ford. But as
exactly.
you mentioned, what an entrance.
Oh, what an entrance! I mean,
Henry Winkler's character, Jack, is looking for one of his old buddies, and Harrison Ford comes wheeling in, and that, was it a Trans Am or Corvette or something called the Ace? He does a couple of spin outs, hops out of the car, and starts going crazy. And you're like, this is great. This is what we needed.
she does 3 donuts with the word Ace written on the side of this orange thing going Yahoo! And you're like, holy crap, that is a Harrison Ford entrance. That is like if Harrison Ford's first appearance in Star Wars was the very end when he comes in Yahoo! And blows some shit up,
Yeah. And this was shot before then, of course, too. So this was shot before Star Wars, but released afterwards. So when we get to the next film, Force 10 from Navarone, that'll be his first choice after Star Wars,
Right.
what to do. This came out beforehand, so he and Sally Field were both kind of stuck with it after they achieved such huge success in Smokey and Star Wars.
Yeah, and so at this point, like Sally Field and Henry Winkler have come together for some reason, even though, the only reason they're not on the bus, the only reason they're having trouble, getting from here to there is because of Henry Winkler. And somehow, and going back to briefly, the fact that he every once in a while will bring up the worm farm so that we realize he has purpose. She just drops into conversation, I'm getting married tomorrow. Like, okay. Which, of course, she drops because she... Tomorrow,
yeah,
right?
Come on. You're not putting up with anybody's crap. You're getting to where you got to get. And then this major distraction comes along in the form of Jack, and it's like, it's very strange.
But yeah, I forget how they end up. Did they hitchhike on the back of a truck or something to get to Harrison Ford's place in wherever, Wyoming, that he is? But yeah, he shows up, like a bat out of hell, and he's a full-on character.
Yeah, and desperately needed at that point. So there was then some energy came in.
Mother is fast.
Hey, man, ain't nobody faster.
Boy, he really does pick up the energy in the Mills movie, and he makes it a Harrison Ford movie for the 20 minutes that he's in it. It's really, it's this three-hander. I wish all 3 were in this movie from the beginning.
I know.
The 3 of them taking a road trip in the Ace car would be really awesome.
Yeah, that's how they lure you in, though. You see the trailer, and there's Sally Field in a Trans Am. You're like, whoa, okay, let's do this. I've done this before. This is fun. And unfortunately, Harrison Ford then leaves the story, and we go back to the awkwardness that is the Field-Winkler relationship.
He gives them his car after they build some rabbit houses.
True. Yeah.
One of the ways they help Harrison Ford, who's also very lost, he's also suffering from PTSD, a different form than Henry Winkler. It's taken a different form, but he's very much aimless, living in the country, alone without much purpose. And he's got all these rabbit houses he was intending to build that aren't built. And so then they say, again, the randomness of this movies and 70s movies in general. 70s movies, we praise them. We praise 70s movies, never thinking of movies like Heroes. But what the 70s movie, what Easy Rider gave the youth, the young filmmaking and acting community, it gave them an excuse to be aimless, to no longer have the rigid strictures of a classic screenplay from the golden age of Hollywood. Now movies could be anything. They could be handheld. They could be out in the... And this movie, it suffers from that. Some are glorified because of that ability. This one suffers from that. So for 10 minutes, we make rabbit houses. However...
It's true.
How many times have we ever seen Harrison Ford do carpentry in a movie?
Yeah, Witness in this, right?
Witness in this.
When a new entertainment website says, did you know Harrison Ford did carpentry before he became an actor? And they're like, yeah, I've heard that many times. Did you know Tom Selleck was supposed to be Indiana Jones? I guess I'm just old, but I know these facts. And that kind of photo would be in there for the carpentry story,
Always.
And yeah, it might be from this movie. Or maybe not. Maybe the movie has significance after all. But the interesting thing about the 4 performances, it's good, it's high energy. It's not great, but it does show you what a great director means to a production.
Yeah.
Because he's great in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. He's good in this.
He's good.
You can see, Lucas just knew more what to do with him and how to better craft the Han Solo performance than the Ken Boyd performance we get here in Heroes from Jeremy Paul Kagan, our director of Heroes.
Not a good director.
Well, he made The Sting 2.
Okay, so I'll maintain my...
And his high point was probably The Journey of Natty Gann, I noticed. If you've ever saw that Disney film with John Cusack, and who is the girl in that? Is it...
That's not Helen Slater, is it? That's... came out the same year. There's a Helen Slater movie. Oh, The Legend
Meredith
of Billie Jean.
Salinger.
Oh.
Put that down for your 5-pointer at the Schmodown. There you go.
There you go.
Meredith Salinger. And there's he did a lot of TV, and I guess Jeremy Kagan still working. So out there,
Now, what year does Sting 2 come out? Because does making $33 million on a movie that just happens to have Harrison Ford and Sally Field in the same year as Star Wars and Smokey and the Bandit get you the sequel to the other previous standard for what a movie making a lot of money was until the existence of
Best Picture,
Jaws and Star Wars?
Yeah. Man, I don't know. We could do that research, Adam, but will we?
No!
We would never get any of these shows done. We're already late on these shows. We would never get them done if we did research. Give me a break. We're just here to talk about Harrison Ford, who rocks.
By the time the movie ends, they play, for reasons unknown, Carry On, My Wayward Son. Just as soon as the movie's over, as soon as the last line has been said in the film, we get the Kansas song, Carry On, My Wayward Son.
That's an insane choice.
Yeah. I don't understand it, but there was an interesting story behind it that I did research. By the time the movie was released on VHS and DVD, that song was replaced by an instrumental song because the rights had gone away.
This is kind of a crazy thing about the first era of video, is that movies never thought about ancillary rights. So there's a lot of early VHS. 16 Candles is a famous example, where a bunch of songs that were in that movie in the theater had to be replaced because there was no contract for that. There was no idea that these things would then go on to have a gigantic life afterwards. It was like, no, it's theatrical presentation. If you're ever going to see Heroes again, it's going to be in the theater during a re-release. That's the only way you could re-see a movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder what it was replaced with, but what an insane choice.
No, just some instrumental song.
Yeah.
Just regular music. Probably something that might have been a little more poignant considering how the film ended. It was a little interesting to have an emotional moment, over emotional, if you ask me. But and then carry on my way. He's like, what? Okay, I guess it's the 70s. We have to do this.
That's a completely brand new tone for this movie in the credits.
Right, as it's ending, as it's going away, it's leaving you.
And this is after the giant PTSD sequence where it goes full, Vietnam vet, and he sees, soldiers in the streets, and as he's running down the street, the whole world is turning into a Vietnam battle scene. And and then after that tone shift, Kansas.
Throw some Kansas in there. The rest of the music was by Jack Nietzsche, who went on to win an Oscar for Up Where We Belong. The music is overbearingly 70s. It was a little tiring, actually. But research, Jack Nietzsche's personal life, his history of his relationship with actress Carrie Snodgrass. He was charged with threatening to kill her after he barged into her home and beat her with a handgun. He pleaded guilty to threatening her, was fined, and placed on 3 years probation.
Well, that ain't the American way.
What is wrong?
What's wrong with Hollywood? Does everybody have a story like that? Any other thoughts on this one, Adam?
So Harrison Ford speeds in, does a couple donuts, boom, it's a Harrison Ford movie, and we're off to the races. He is entered in a race. This is the most pod racing way out of their problem is they trashed the diner, so now they owe $300. How are we going to make $300? Hey, I just met Anakin Skywalker. I'm sorry. Harrison Ford. And he's going to win $300 in this race, except that Harrison Ford can't drive his car for some reason. So he has Henry Winkler drive it, who's never driven his car. So 70s movie, I think is what I'm saying here.
Yeah, it's one thing to the next that is just... I don't know why. I can't explain why half the things happen in this movie.
Movies did not have any pressure, especially movies by the youth, had no pressure to... Because I think the studio executives had no idea what made Easy Rider make money. So they're just like, whatever you kids want to do.
We've been working hard. We could do less. We don't have to write this whole script and everything. We don't have to have...
We need to find the next Dennis Hopper, not knowing that that's a very damaged human being with a lot of problems.
One of my favorite things about South Park was apparently when they write their scripts, and you may have heard this, they write, a lot of plots are this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. They write their plots with this happens, therefore this happens, therefore this happens. That doesn't work here.
No, and
they trash the diner. Therefore, they have to they have to race a car to win the money to pay the guest. I mean, it's just
yeah. Oh well, and the thing about the South Park is that's their rewriting process. So they'll come up with a bunch of ideas early on in that documentary you're referencing. They just go, oh, this would be a funny bit, and then at the very end, for their final draft, they go, well, let's connect all these things with therefores instead of ands. So their rough draft is ands and their rewrite is therefores. This movie
had no rewrite.
One draft, done, yeah, exactly. Ready to go. But, and you and I studied directors enough that, there is a tremendous process on the set of trying to hold all the plot information. And, you'll hear a lot of times where when a scene has to do a lot of heavy lifting. That's something that largely was rewritten maybe the day before or on the day, where they're like, we really got to tie some of these things together. And that's just a good director will get that out of their writer, or a good writer-director will be able to facilitate that himself, or a cast will sometimes, but this director was not able to get any of or see any of that. Just seemed constantly behind the 8 ball before Sally Field drove a car into the pool table.
That's right. They trashed the whole bar there was a fight scene at.
Right. She drove it to rescue him in that scene I referenced earlier. She drives the car through the wall, which is
the wall made of the balsa wood wall.
Right. Not a single bit of cement or mason brick in that wall.
Yeah. Oh my God. They just leave a trail of destruction behind them with very few consequences.
Paul, when we started this journey for the Ford Fiesta,
indeed, we did.
This is what a revelation all of these Harrison Ford movies are in their particular era. I mean, this is a very 77 movie, which Star Wars is not. Star Wars is not a 77 movie at all.
Maybe points for a first attempt to comment on soldier issues post-war.
Sure.
But just a ham-fisted one, and completely, it just streamlined this story.
Yeah, it would be one thing if, as a technique, we are put in the position of all these people who are meeting him for the first time, so that when we learn more about him, but it doesn't, I don't think it's trying to do that either. I think it's just not giving you anything to go on so that you're judging him as like, oh, what a crazy person, when it's... Doesn't he pick up a ventriloquist dummy on the bus and then just talk with it randomly, like flip a coin? What are we doing next?
and with all his insanity, he gets a Golden Globe nomination and a BAFTA nod as well.
Is that because his performance is so good in this movie, or is it because we had yet to talk about the ramifications of the Vietnam War in terms of PTSD?
Well, that's certainly TV Guide called this one of the first movies to deal with the plight of veterans. Yeah. And so, perhaps it was a reward just to say, good on you, movie.
Right.
Despite the fact that performances had already come out by like Brando's in The Godfather.
Right.
And Max von Sydow in The Exorcist. I wouldn't put Winkler's performance next to those
as a BAFTA winner.
So it was probably the content more than anything else.
I think Winkler is miscast here. A brave choice for him, being the Fonz. I'm sure he didn't want to go play the Fonz in a movie, to play although he was in a leather jacketed movie with Stallone, right? What was that?
Was that Lords of Flatbush?
Yeah. But he obviously wants to play a different character, different role, but I don't think he's cast right. I don't think he brings much to it.
He stretched better in Night Shift.
There you go. That's the Henry Winkler.
But back to our man of the moment, Harrison Ford. Let's go through his definitive list of essentials. Was there righteous anger?
No, I don't think so.
He is not an angry. He had frustration here and there, but never anger.
I don't hear from you for I don't know how long. You call me up, you show up here, you start telling me how to run my life. This ain't the army,
In fact, I think the key to his character was that a lot was being repressed and pushed down, which is what came out in the fact that he was being aimless and not, building the rabbit house and stuff like that. So, no, like he didn't even know to be angry at, his situation.
Yeah, he could have been angrier at the world, but he wasn't. And so that brought him, does he point? No. Does he smile and have charm? Absolutely. He hops out of that Trans Am or whatever he was driving, and he's immediately Mr. Smile, and he's immediately post-Death Star destruction reuniting with Leia and Luke.
Very much so. Very much so.
That guy right away. So...
Actually, you're right. That's you look for little tiny Harrison Ford moments, and when he does jump out of that car and hug them, it is a 1-to-1 with when he runs up to Luke and Leia getting off the X-wing there at the end of Star Wars. It's the exact same acting.
Did we talk about the fact that there's that rumor out there that Mark said "Carrie" upon there? That's a whole. Watch that scene again.
Yeah, people say that, but. There's such significant redubbing and re-recording. If anybody caught that, they would have redubbed it. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, by now, yeah.
I've always heard him going, "Hey!" That's it. I've never heard Carrie.
People hear what they want to hear. So Ford in Heroes doesn't shout or growl. He doesn't hit a guy. Even though there's a brief war sequence. It's guns and running.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't get hit either. So not a lot of the essentials yet. You could put this in the high percentage of how Harrison Ford is.
Right. He's very... I mean, he never plays a hillbilly again. Like, he never plays a good old boy again, does he?
I don't think so.
This might be the end of Good Old Boys. So for Good Old Boys, you got this, you got Bob Falfa, and you got Willie Bill. The definitive good old boy performances of Harrison Ford at this point.
Yeah. Then he becomes, like, typical straight white leading man for whatever your thriller or... action movie requires, government figure, business person, that from here on out.
Yeah.
Pretty much, whether it's getting shot in the head or making it with Melanie Griffith. Just like your white guy.
Convenient.
So, but 75%, I think, here, because he has a lot of fun with the 75% Harrison Ford in this.
Well, yeah, I would say as well, because, Han Solo is a hot shot pilot. He is there's a lot of Han Solo in this, and Bob Falfa, because they're drivers, they're good at that sort of thing. They live by their own rules. Yeah, I see a lot of Harrison Ford. I might go a little less than 75, but I'll go 70.
I could go there with you. You want to agree on 70?
I'm with you too.
Let's agree on 70. It's about 70% Harrison Ford here.
Now we have a fun GIF you've now made out of his when he smacks a beer can against his head. It's the first and only time we see that as well. He drinks a beer can, smashes it on his head. You know how they just collapse him on their forehead? He does that and tosses it behind him. I'm like, that's a movement you don't see from Harrison Ford much. That's fun.
This is the first and last time you will see him, as Steve Lewis said, doing a Bluto. I sent him that GIF as well.
Yeah, exactly.
The first and last time that you'll see Harrison Ford do a Bluto. So it's not on our definitive list, but notable.
Had Bluto done that? When was Animal House? 78? He might have taken it from Ford.
He pre-Blutoed the...
And of course, the Harrison Ford punch count now remains at 1. But you have an addendum to this.
I do.
Based on our Star Wars talk that we forgot to bring up then.
Yes.
Oh, no, it's not the punch count. Sorry.
Yes. He does point at Jabba the Hutt in the special edition.
Look, Jabba, next time you want to talk to me, come see me yourself. Don't send one of these twerps.
So if you want to know how old Paul and I are, he doesn't point in Star Wars.
It's true.
Yeah, we just... I just don't think about the special editions, so I forgot.
No, neither do I.
But retroactively, we're adding a point to his... But he was already tracking about 100% Harrison Ford in Star Wars anyway, right? So it doesn't affect the number that we came out with there.
Yeah.
And that wraps Heroes from 1977. Again, scroll down in Amazon or Vudu when you're trying to rent it. You'll find. Just keep going, and it'll eventually come up.
Here.
And if you have something to say about the film, please chime in at The Movie Guys everywhere on social media, from Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and wherever you listen to the show. And, of course, at themovieguys.net. Our next show will be hopefully soon. We're back on track.
Nice.
And we will be talking about Force 10 from Navarone.
Oh, I haven't seen the first 9 Force movies. Am I going to get lost on this?
No, Adam. You won't.
Well, there ain't no problem. I can win tomorrow. There ain't nothing to it. All you gotta do is go round and round in a circle. I can do that real good.